Well, yesterday, Matt Walsh from the Daily Wire and I got into an exchange about a hot button topic that is sure to set people off. It certainly did on Twitter, but Twitter isn't real life. The reality is, I think most people have a nuanced take when it comes to this particular issue. It's not so black and white for most, at least that's my opinion, but I could be wrong. The discussion, or rather the evisceration, was about trans teens and top surgery. Now, top surgery is breast removal, which for many of us is drastic to think about. Matt has made much of his show about trans and gender issues and the growing concern many parents are having that their child is or will be indoctrinated or groomed by woke liberals. Now, I don't discount this feeling, and I agree that the trend is concerning. I do think for many youth, it's trendy to declare themselves as non-binary or trans or what have you. There is data to back this up. And it's also concerning that so many adults and those in the medical professionals seem to be running away with this rather than questioning it, pushing back, and understanding that for most of these youth, they will not be trans in their adult life. But I also believe in medical autonomy and the ability to make our own medical decisions, not just for ourselves, but for our children. I don't think it's the government's place to intervene and tell me what is or isn't best medically for my child when I have the agreement and approval of many medical professionals. We saw this throughout the pandemic. Many parents were demonized for being unwilling to vaccinate their children. They were being told that their children would not be allowed to go to school if they did not do what the government deemed to be healthy for their child. I'm not in agreement with that. I believe people should have the ability, so as long as they have some medical backing, some medical professionals, a team of other people, and also consent amongst all of the guardians involved, I believe people should be able to make their own medical decisions and the decisions for their children. Now, many mischaracterized my stances on this issue, and as my former co-host of Rising, Brianna Joy Gray, would often say, argued in bad faith. However, not all. Some understood that even if they didn't agree, and I want to have that discussion today with one of these people, we could still disagree and have a discussion and not go into what I would call cancel culture. Greg Foreman is the host of Black Conservative Perspective on YouTube, and he's made a video about this exchange. Greg, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Hey, how you doing, Kim? Thanks for having me.
So I really, this has been obviously something that blew up on Twitter. Matt Walsh now even saying, very much coming after me, I would say not engaging in an exchange. I felt like it was more of an attack. I thought that was a little bit hypocritical coming from a lot of times what I seem to gather from many people on the right, especially coming from an outlet like Daily Wire, that they're willing to have conversations, they're willing to engage and try to understand the other perspective. But I appreciated your video on it in particular. You did a video on this yesterday, and you say that you're a fan of both Matt and I.
Yes, that is correct.
And I felt like you gave the best breakdown of this, where you did not mischaracterize my viewpoint on this. You instead understood that I was coming from a libertarian, a medical freedom perspective on this, whereas you align on this particular issue with Matt Walsh. You are a conservative when it comes to social issues. Is that right?
Yeah, particularly when it comes to children. I'm probably more in agreements with you when it comes to adults.
Okay. But what about, so when it comes to children, well, first I want to go through the exchange first before we get into more of the opinion about this. But you did a breakdown on your channel. I want to show some of the screenshots from your segment on this. So here is the first one here. This is the actual tweet from Matt Walsh. So this is, let me introduce you to Dr. Scott Mosser. I'm sorry about the screenshot with the way the way your face has been framed there. Sorry about that. It says, let me introduce you to Dr. Scott Mosser, who cuts the breasts off of adolescent girls. Many surgeons across the country will and do inflict top surgery on minors. Mosser assures us that he follows very strict guidelines before performing double mastectomies on children. So first of all, I just want to say, that is obviously shocking, right? I think many people, they see this, they hear this, they see photographs of teens that have had the double mastectomy, and it's incredibly shocking. So I understand the emotion behind it. I understand the shock behind it. So, what is your take on this doctor and this surgery? First of all, when you see a tweet like this.
Yeah, well, my take on it is I'm not very surprised by it, because I basically talk about this stuff a lot on my channel, in which, you do have these doctors in these hospitals, some of these hospitals, these children's hospitals, saying they don't really do it, but they actually do, where they are performing these surgeries on kids. Now, they say that the age that they do it is 16 when it comes to mastectomies. Now, they claim they don't do other procedures like, removing a woman's reproductive system,
Right.
or, cutting off the male penis. They don't do that until they're 18.
Right.
However, there's been some evidence to suggest that they might not necessarily be very honest about that either, right? So when I see something like that, what I see when I actually watch that interview of that guy, the video, he's basically saying, look, this is where we're going to be in 30, 40 years. When gender is not a real issue, right? When society is not arguing about it the way we're arguing about it now. So I want to go ahead and get ahead of it. And I'm going to perform, these procedures on children as young as possible, whether that be 11, 12-year-olds, including cut off, parts of their bodies, getting them hormones, puberty blockers, things that are irreversible. And, I think that, in my opinion, that's just irresponsible from a medical perspective, because these kids don't really understand exactly what they're getting into. And not only do you have parents pushing this on kids, you also have, doctors, psychiatrists, therapists. They're also doing it as well too. And I think that there's a lot of kind of capitalistic kind of interest going on here, in which there's a new market for kids that want to transition. And I think that it's not something that's happening naturally. I think it's happening because there is a profit motive here. And I think that doctors and therapists are exploiting that. And I think that's part of the reason why you're seeing this explosion in kids that are seeking these treatments when, 30, even 20, 30 years ago, this was not a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with you that this trend is concerning as far as really, I don't, it's not to me concerning that kids are coming around being like, I'm non-binary now, or I'm the other. I mean, I think we can expect kids are always going to rebel against their parents. There's always that period of time, I think, in a teen's life where they don't know who they are. They're trying to figure themselves out. They're going to say they're one thing or another, or they want to be something or something else, like when they grow up or something. I think that is normal and natural, and that should be expected. And parents should expect, depending on when they're raising their kid, the generation they're raising their kid in, that their kid is going to be proclaiming whatever that fad is of that era. And parents need to be able to combat that. And parents need to be able to understand and recognize this is a phase, and pick and choose their battles a bit on that. But I do think where it gets concerning is when the adults then join in on it. And that is, to me, where it becomes more concerning, when you've got the teachers, the medical professionals, and they're then saying, they're not just understanding that this might be a teen phase or the trendy thing. They're instead saying, oh, then you are, and we must do something about this. I agree that that's completely concerning. And that, to me, is really where I think the concern is when it comes to that particular issue of, kids coming out and saying that they're non-binary or trans or something. But I don't know if I agree that there's a profit motive behind it. And the reason I would say that is because this is such a tiny group. There isn't an enormous, I mean, this is very different than, there's plenty of other, I think, surgeries or procedures that would affect the masses. I mean, we see this with like the prescribing of antidepressants and things like Adderall. Even nose jobs amongst teenagers is much more prevalent than something like a child saying, I'm trans, and I want to now go into the level of getting puberty blockers and even then surgery, which is another layer on top of that. I mean, the stats show that it is concerning. It's high, right? In the adult population, it's 0.5% of adults are trans. So it's a very, very small percentage of people. In the child population, in the adolescents under 18, it's 1.4. So clearly there's a big difference between it's 3 times higher, 1.4 to 0.5. That means that most of these kids are likely going to grow out of it by the time they're adults. They're likely, their gender dysphoria, if they truly are suffering from that, will resolve itself by the time they hit adulthood, which is why you wouldn't want for the vast majority of these kids to even begin undergoing any sort of treatment like this, right? Because you would say you're most likely, this is a gender dysphoria thing. It happens. It also resolves itself naturally, often, most of the time. So I don't know, when we're looking at such a small percentage of kids, I don't know if I would agree that there's a big profit there to be had.
Well, here's my challenge to you on that. I would say that as of right now, yes, the market is small, but Pew Research has shown that with each new generation, kids are becoming more, I guess they're identifying more with LGBTQ, right? They're identifying more with these, identities, these gender identities that are being put out there. And what is happening is that people are basically saying, look, if you show any signs that you have traits that could align with the opposite sex, right? Let's say you are a young girl and you like G.I. Joe, or you like to play with Power Rangers and do things that are traditionally more masculine, you're a tomboy. What happens is that they're now saying, look, you may actually be transgender, right? And I think that's the problem. I don't think it's just a fad that is happening in schools where, kids kind of go through a phase. I think for the most part, that's what it is. But I think that the problem is that you're seeing it happen more and more and more, and more kids are becoming a part of this group that includes going through some of these therapies, taking these puberty blockers, and then eventually transitioning into surgery. I think that apps like TikTok, social media has very much influenced these kids in regards to trying to identify with this ideology, this group of people. And I think that is what is leading to more kids coming out and doing this. And I think that a lot of these medical professionals, these therapists are saying this, and they're saying, well, hey, why push back, right? Like, I mean, at the end of the day, you can make money off of it. And I think that as of right now, the market may be small, but in the future, like that doctor was saying, hey, 30, 40 years,
Right.
This is not a conversation anymore.
Yeah. And I mean, I definitely disagreed with that doctor. I don't have the clip to share, but I definitely, him saying in the future, 30, 40 years from now, gender won't be, we won't be discussed. He's kind of thinking that people will buy into the idea that that there's more than two sexes essentially. And I'm not sure if I agree with him on that. I guess time will tell on that for sure. But also I want to point out even the 1.4% of adolescents right now are claiming that they identify as trans. Even then, even a much smaller percentage then go on to then go through puberty blockers or and then even a tinier percentage then go on to actually have any sort of top surgery. And I think it's important, and as you mentioned, as you brought up, they're not getting bottom surgery. That's not happening. We're not talking about chopping off penises or giving girls hysterectomies. We're talking about, sure. I mean, I guess we could always think that this is going to happen. But right now they are talking about mastectomies, removing breasts, which to me, there are surgeries similar to this that happen with underage, under 18 that do happen, modifications to bodies that we're not seeing as much these days societal outrage over. Although I do remember when I was younger, there was a lot more outrage about it. So let me just go ahead and go further with this, with what you brought up on your channel here. So here was my response to Matt Walsh. I said, it's their body, their choice. If their parents or anyone is pressuring them, let them live with that and take it up with them later. It's none of our business how others choose to live their lives. So obviously, that was what set off quite a bit of a storm. There was another comment that I made that we'll get to that set off even more. But I appreciate at least that, you seem to understand I'm coming from a medical freedom or a libertarian perspective on this. I guess my question would be, as a conservative on social issues, what would be your solution to this? So are you looking to ban this procedure entirely for youth?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the solution is just to wait till they're 18. And this is, again, why I try to be very careful when I say this. I'm more of a libertarian when it comes to adults. I'm not trying to ban people from being trans. I'm not trying to, get rid of gay rights or anything like that, or reverse on gay marriage. I'm like you. I'm like, look, you're an adult. I might disagree with it. I don't really care, right? Do what you want to do. As long as you don't go after the kids. But they're going after the kids, right? So to answer your question, it should just be banned across the board until the age of 18. I don't see what the negative consequences would be of just making them wait. Now, the activists claim that, well, the negative consequences that, well, these kids are suicidal.
Some of them
Although,
are. I mean, I believe that they're. I mean,
yeah, but there's no
I mean,
proof that. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I guess it comes down to, do you think that there is no such thing as a truly a person truly suffering from gender dysmorphia, and when they look in the mirror and they see their breasts developing, they actually take knives and attempt to cut them off? I mean, that is happening with. I get it. It's not the 1.4% that are, the trend, what they call trend sexuals. I understand that there is that happening, but what about the people that actually are truly suffering with this mental illness?
What they should do is seek as much therapy as possible. Wait till they're 18. That's truly what I believe. Keep them from committing suicide, but get them the therapy that they need. Okay, because it's. I'm not saying that there are kids out there don't truly actually do believe that they're the opposite gender or whatever. That's probably true. Even though, again, I got questions. I think most of these kids are suffering from anxiety, depression. Some of it is peer pressure. But again, the problem is, and I'm going to go back to something that you said before about, well, they're not performing bottom surgery, hysterectomy on children, people below, kids below the age of 18. And I got to push back against that a little bit, because this is not a slippery slope anymore. We're actually falling off a cliff. Lives of TikTok, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that account, did some investigative journalism into a children's hospital in DC, in which they called the hospital and asked them about, could you perform a gender affirming hysterectomy on my 16-year-old daughter? And the hospital had 2 workers confirm, yes, we can do that. Now, Lives of TikTok published this story and their findings, and obviously the mainstream liberal media went back and said, oh, it's a lie. The hospital doesn't do this for, kids under the age of 18 or whatever. But I truly actually do believe that what is happening is that you are eventually going to get to the point where that is what is going to be the norm, right? Yeah. It's a slippery. It's not a slippery. We're really just falling off a cliff, in which this is going to be. It starts with, well, it's just it's just a social transition. You're just using different pronouns or whatever. No big deal. And then it's like, okay, well, you hop on the puberty blockers. Well, it's no big deal. Puberty blockers are completely reversible, even though they have all these side effects that nobody really wants to talk about, that are not actually really as reversible as they claim. And then it goes to hormones, which basically affirms you hormonally to whatever sex you want to be. And then after that, it's surgery, right? So I think what is happening is that you're going to see this stuff become more and more common, and the ages are going to get younger and younger and younger, just like what that surgeon, that doctor that we were talking about has implied, that, hey, we don't think that there's any age, right, in which this might not be appropriate. I think that's where it's going to go if we just have a libertarian kind of, stance on this. We say, well, whatever, live and let live. That's where it's going to go. And I think that's the problem here.
No, but you can't, but you can't do these things for kids that are not going through puberty. I mean, they have to have at least gotten to the point of puberty in order to be doing any of this. So we're not going to be talking about 9-year-olds or 8-year-olds or 7-year-olds or 5-year-olds. I mean, that's just not going to happen, because scientifically, medically, it can't. In order to give a kid puberty blockers, you do it at the time right before puberty. So that can happen a bit younger with puberty blockers, although there's some discussion on what, they believe it's reversible. Of course, we don't know the long-term side effects of that kind of thing. But once you go off of puberty blockers, puberty begins. So you just delay puberty. And they actually do give these blockers mostly to non-trans kids for other reasons. So my fear is, if we go down this path of banning, then we ban it for people who actually need it. I mean, most kids that are on puberty blockers are not trans. They're not doing it because they're trans. They're suffering from other medical conditions that require puberty blockers. Then when you talk about, surgery, there are kids that are born with both organs. Maybe one is showing externally, their chromosomes are different. I mean, we know about these abnormalities that occur. And if we say we're just going to ban it for anyone under 18, we're ostracizing, I think, people that really need it, not to mention the people that actually do suffer from gender dysphoria, and truly their children are attempting suicide, attempting to cut off their own breasts on a regular basis. I have great sympathy for these parents, and I don't believe it's my place or the government to come in and say, no, you cannot do what you think is best for your child. though I completely am also sympathetic to the concern that people are having about the trend growing, and the medical professionals and the teachers and adults, going along with it, and even saying, oh yeah, well, if that's who you are, then that's who you are. But also, one more point on this is, I feel like these same fears happen when there was a lot of discussions about gays, right? When gays are coming out, and if we normalize it, then your child will suddenly fall into the fad and become gay. And that'll be, and maybe there was like a trendy period where people said, well, I'm gay, or I'm bi, or I'm not really sure about my sexuality. And there's always this trend that they go through. But at the end of the day, people, teenagers are going to say things to rebel, but at the end of the day, they are still going to be who they are. And, you can't fake anything. You can't fake gender dysphoria or being gay. I mean, you are who you are. And if you are those things, then you are those things. And I don't think we saw like this big, in my perspective, I don't feel like there's a huge problem now once there was more people coming out being gay. And that was a giant issue, in the 90s, people really concerned about it to the same level that we are concerned about this right now.
Well, first of all, I'll say, you say with these conversations, there's a lot of nuance. Obviously,
Yeah.
when I say that, I'm for banning, puberty blockers, the use of hormones, and, banning these surgeries. I'm talking about for that very specific reason of changing your gender. I'm not talking about for other medical reasons in which these things will be used, in which, again, is actually medically necessary. I don't see these things as medically necessary if it's just to change your gender. If a kid is actually experiencing gender dysphoria, I still don't see a convincing argument as to why not just make them wait till they're 18. They should just wait till 18. And then once they do that, they can have at it. They can do whatever they want to do. You want to chop off your penis? Go for it. Chop off your breast? Go for it. Take all the hormones you want. But I think that the disadvantages, the negative externalities of not having kids wait until they're 18 is more disastrous than having them wait till they're 18, because at the very least, if they wait till 18, they've had more time to think about it. Like you've admitted, like we both know, most of these kids will grow out of this stuff. It's just a phase. They'll grow out of it. Give them some time. Kids are, they're confused throughout most of their lives, right? Me and you, I'm pretty sure you was 17, 18 years old. We both were probably pretty ignorant about the world. We didn't know who we were and what we wanted to be, right? So I'm just saying, like, let kids be kids, and let's not push things on them prematurely when they just got to wait a few more years. But, I would also say, and I'm not necessarily saying that this is what I agree with, but I'm saying there are some conservatives that would argue that with, things like gay marriage and, being more accepting of gay people, it has led to this. It starts with, well, let's just be accepting of this, right? Gay marriage is fine, whatever. But there's a certain group of people, particularly far left social progressives, that always want more. It's never going to be enough, even if you have equal rights. They don't want equal rights anymore. They want special rights. Okay. And I think that that's kind of where we're going here. And I think that's what people have problems with. It starts with, well, we just want to be, recognized or whatever. We just want to be equal to. No. It is a right. You're taking away gay rights. If a teacher can't talk to their kids about sex and gender in class, you're actually, against gay rights, which is exactly what the Democrats said when Ron DeSantis passed the so-called Don't Say Gay legislation, the Parental Rights and Education Act. They said that's an attack on LGBTQ rights, and that's just not true. I mean, it is as anti-straight as it is anti-gay. So I'm just saying, like, I think that what is happening here is that there is a slippery slope. At the very least, I think in some aspects we're falling off of cliff here when it comes to, these rights for people who have, historically been marginalized or whatever.
Well, I guess, and thank you for all of that. I think from my perspective on it, I just always look at the exceptions. I always think of the parents or the people that truly are the exceptions to this, and it would be negatively impacting them. And I just don't believe the government. I mean, I know that I'm a libertarian on this type of stuff. I just really don't believe the government should be intervening, especially when there are medical doctors who say, I agree with this. Now, we might not agree with those medical doctors. There's plenty of medical doctors I have been listening to, especially throughout the pandemic, that I did not agree with. And I felt that there should have been more voices out there. There should have been the ability to have the doctors that say, I don't agree. out there and their voice is heard. And I think with the trans issue and what I've been reading about is, a lot of times these parents go, and their kid comes out, the parent is, freaking out. They're taking the kid to a therapist or something. And that therapist immediately just says, well, the only thing you can do is accept it. And we need to now push forward and give them all of these things that you're talking about. And so I agree that, and then the problem is with that, from what I'm understanding, is that there's then no other opinion on this. The other opinions are being silenced in this conversation. There aren't, the doctors that say, hey, wait a minute, this could be a phase. These kids are going to grow out of it. We're not hearing from them. And to me, that's the solution, as it was the solution during the pandemic. The solution is more voices, not banning, but instead saying to maybe even we could make a law that I would probably be okay with, saying, okay, if you get an opinion from this particular doctor, you do need to go and seek at least 2 or 3 more. One of the, you got to get multiple opinions on this. You've got to get more therapy or counseling on this, rather than just the consensus that is growing. That is, you must accept it and that's it. And there's nothing else you can do. Right. So to me, it's more about education, give more information, and then let people make their own decision. Because I do believe there are some cases, really legitimate cases, where it is a life-saving procedure to help some of these kids that are very, very far gone. I personally have seen, I've personally seen this. And so I do think that conservative parents sometimes end up in this situation, and they're totally against it until it's happening to them. And then when it is, they realize that child can't even go to school because they can't be let out of their sight. One parent has to quit their job and stay home and essentially babysit their teenager, because the teenager can never be left out of their sight, because the minute they're left out of their sight, they're harming themselves. And this goes on for years and years. And finally, there's a possibility to get some relief. I don't know if I'm in a position, I just don't feel like I'm in a position to say to those parents, nope, sorry, but my morals override yours. You don't get to make the best decision for your kid. Vaccinate them because I said so. You're not going to, I just don't agree with that. I just don't agree with that.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. I'm not necessarily sure if I would compare the whole, vaccination thing to, kids getting their genitals
I mean, why not?
cut off.
Because here's the thing. Yes, we can. We absolutely can. And the reason is because people are afraid of sterilization. That is the one thing they keep talking about over and over and over again, right? Yeah. Am I not wrong? So if it's sterilization we're worried about, then you can compare them.
Well, here's the thing. I think that when you're talking about this conversation of kids and them undergoing this procedure, right? When it comes to the vaccine, I think it's safe to say that for the most part, you're not being sterilized when you get it. You can, still have kids or whatever. Okay. And when it comes to these kids,
well, top surgery and puberty blockers are not sterilizing.
Yeah, but you're taking away a biological function.
Sure, a biologic, right? You are taking away.
You're taking away a biological function. You're taking it away from Yeah, you're taking it away from kids.
But it's not sterilization. I mean, to be fair.
I don't agree with you. I agree with you when it comes to, I'm against the vaccine mandate. I don't think that the government should be pressuring kids or parents to, make people take the vaccine or whatever. But the government is basically saying, look, we don't want you to put things in your body that are going to harm your body. Okay. We don't want you to put things in your body. I think with the vaccine, the government is making you put things in your body that, there's some questions about. And I think they're a little bit different. Okay.
Yeah.
Again, you can always wait till you're 18. I haven't heard a convincing argument to say, why can't you wait till you're 18? I understand that kids are, some of these kids can be suicidal, but
to the extreme, to the extreme.
But can we get them to 18? That's the question. Because once they turn 18, do what you want to do.
Right.
But can we get you to 18 is the question. And it's not like there's much evidence that actually undergoing these procedures gets rid of wanting to commit suicide.
No, right? I totally agree with you. I mean, I completely agree. That would be my preference, right? I mean, if I was guiding, let's say, one of my nieces or nephews, and I know in your video you criticize, I don't have children, so maybe, but I think it's an unfair criticism. I think it's an unfair criticism because
it's not a criticism. It's just, I'm just pointing out that maybe you.
Well, I have children in my life. No, but
Yeah,
I have plenty of children in my life that I absolutely love, and I feel like they're my own. I have plenty of kids
yeah.
in this situation, and I agree. I mean, if I had one of my nieces or nephews come out and say, "I want to get this, I want to do puberty blockers, I want to go," I mean, my personal counseling to them would be like, "What? No, don't do this." In these situations, but I also, like I said, I've seen situations, very rare, where it is extreme. And in that situation, I'm like, man, do whatever you need to do to save your kid's life. I mean, they're in a dire situation, but that is very rare. But I do want to protect the ability for those rare people. But so I mean, I agree morally. I wouldn't give that counseling. I think people should wait. Absolutely. I think the medical professionals should be more responsible and be advocating for that as well. I think they should be much more responsible in all of this. And, there may be things or measures we can implement to make them more responsible. I'm just not sure if I want to criminalize, if that makes
I
sense.
mean, I think that parents, so I think that kids who end up going through these procedures under the age of 18 with the approval of their parents and their doctors, if they end up regretting it later in life, I think they should be allowed to sue.
Yeah, I mean,
I
I
think that
agree
that's the
totally.
I think that's the perfect solution, right?
I
If we're
think,
not trying to ban it,
yeah,
all right, cool. You guys are convinced that this person has gender dysphoria and cutting off their breasts and their penis and pumping them with these hormones is the right thing that's going to help them. Great.
yeah,
If you're so sure about that, then take legal responsibility for it. If they grow up and they say, I regret undergoing this, because if you've ever listened to detransition stories, I'm pretty sure maybe you
yeah,
have,
yeah,
right? Guys
yeah,
like Buck Sexton, okay, some other people out there. I've been, I watch TikToks and stuff all the time, but it's terrible. Like, there's some people that, are in their 20s that are, using the bathroom in a bag, okay, because, they tried to, change, their genitalia or whatever. And it's like, you don't want that for kids. Kids
right,
don't understand
right,
that that's possibly what could happen if they do this, okay? And they don't understand. It's just not a one, especially when it comes to surgeries. It's not just a
right.
one surgery thing.
No,
You
it's
have to keep
forever.
getting surgery.
Yeah,
Exactly. You have to keep getting surgery. You have to keep taking these hormones. You have to keep being on these drugs. And this is, again, why I disagree with you when it comes to the whole profit motive thing. Right now, the market is small, but for each person that is a lifetime patient that has become trans, you're talking about
yeah,
$100,000+, up to $200,000 lifetime value, right? You get 100,000, 200,000 kids. That's a lot of money. You see what I'm saying?
right.
So, my thing is that I just think that if we're not banning, at the very least, make the parents and doctors and therapists, everybody involved in these decisions when it comes to kids, take responsibility for it. If the kid grows up to regret their choice, that is the perfect middle ground for me. And I
I
try
agree
to
with you
find
on that.
middle ground
Yeah.
when it comes to what both sides can agree
Right.
with,
Well,
because
you've
that's the
done a
only way to
great
move
job.
forward.
You've done a great job,
Yeah.
because that I totally agree with that. I think, look, like, if you're going to screw up your kid to this level, and that's a decision you guys all think that you're consenting to, and everybody's, on board with that, the doctors, the therapist, the kid, the parent, both parents, these are kind of the rules that they have right now. Then yeah, you've got to take you've got to be liable. I don't want any immunity for any liability going on with these decisions that are extreme when you're allowing a decision to be made for your minor child, which is anybody under the age of 18. I know you have to go, you have to catch a flight, but I do want to bring up just this last one, and it was with Lauren Chen. Let me see if I can find the actual. So this was the tweet. So Lauren Chen chimes in on this, and she says, "Their body, their choice does not apply to minors. Do you think children can consent to sex? If not, what makes consent to permanently disfigure surgery any different?" And my thinking on that was, I thought she was actually discussing what we're discussing, which is teenagers. So, because that's the discussion, it's not children that are getting puberty blockers or these surgeries. They haven't gone through puberty to remove breasts. So my response to her was, minors actually can consent to sex. Each state has its own laws on this. She then, of course, said, what the F, Kim? I mean, I was just literally answering the question. I don't know why people got so mad at me for answering. I wasn't saying, yeah, kids should have sex, it's fine. I was just answering, saying they literally can't. I mean,
you,
in most
you were
states, the age of consent is 16. I was just answering the question.
you were giving a legal perspective,
I
not a
right,
moral
right,
perspective.
right, right.
And
I
I
was
think that, again, you got to understand, conservatives are more concerned about morality, and that, we all understand that laws does not equal morality. That's why we allow slavery, we allow Jim Crow. All that stuff was legal, but it wasn't moral. And I think that's kind of where, she's coming from with that, is that,
well, she was saying can't. I mean, if she would have said shouldn't, then I would have understood she was coming from a moral perspective. But she said can't, and I was like, well, no, they can. I mean, most states, the age of consent is 16. And, some states, they say, well, it's 16 only with certain age differences. Others say, nah, whatever, age of consent is 16, point blank. But yeah, I was answering it legally. And then I got this, then people came out really after that comment calling me, a predator of some kind, or a groomer, or a pedophile. It was insane. I was literally just answering saying, well, no, I don't know. That one went off the rails for me. So on that perspective, but I appreciate you in your video. I was hesitant to watch it. I saw it and I thought, oh, here we go. And I clicked on your video, which I encourage people to go to your channel and watch. And you broke it down, I thought, very well, understanding my perspective coming from a more medical freedom libertarian perspective. And of course, being conservative, understanding the conservative morality point of view on this, and thinking that, we've got to help guide society with morals. I understand the perspective. I just don't really agree with it. But so I appreciate you, Greg.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you should be canceled. I think that where I disagree with Matt Walsh is him saying that, because of this one take that we disagree with, you should be, effectively what he's saying is that you should be, canceled. Nobody should listen to you anymore. That you are.
He did call for my canceling, essentially. I mean, he claims that he didn't. Conservatives are saying they didn't, but it's like when you say you shouldn't listen to that person anymore. I mean, what do you?
Yeah, I mean, your whole job is to have people listen to you. So when you're telling people not to listen to you anymore, again, that to me, again, is, I don't like that, right? I'm not a fan of that, because it's like, if people listen to you, people understand that even if you're on the right, you say a lot of things and your perspectives align with what a lot of people are feeling right now, especially when it comes to, again, medical freedom and the vaccine. You're talking about the pandemic, the lockdowns, the war in Ukraine and Russia. You have perspectives that we can agree with, and I think we can gain some insights from the things that you say. And just because you have a certain opinion on this issue that doesn't necessarily agree with conservatives doesn't necessarily mean that we shouldn't listen to any of your takes or anything like that. I think that there's some things people can write about. There's some things people are going to be wrong about. And I don't necessarily think that your opinion was that bad, because I literally see people who actually are saying, no, kids should be forced into doing this. They should be pushed into doing this. That's not what you're saying. You're just saying, look, I really don't care all that much.
I'm just saying, right. It's their right. It's their life, and if they want to mess, people are going to make decisions that they're going to regret. I can't go around trying to morally stop everybody from making decisions I think they're going to end up regretting later in life. But yeah, Greg, I appreciate you. I think that, and that's why I wanted to have you on to discuss this with me. A lot of people are saying, well, bring Matt or something. I'm like, I just don't think they would argue with me or have this conversation in good faith. I think the minute you go down the path of pointing the finger at someone, basically calling them a shameful, abhorrent human being, which is what Matt did to me, and saying this person's a pedophile, a groomer. Once you go down that road, I mean, you've lost. I think then you actually, I think as a commentator, you yourself kind of lose a little bit of credibility in at least the ability to have conversations and have an understanding with people, and at least try to see where they're coming from, which I think is needed in today's media world more than anything. I get it. There are people out there, crazies on the right, crazies on the left. And, sometimes you just will never agree, but at least I try to understand, even if I'm never going to agree. So I appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it, and best of luck.
Yeah. Well, Greg Foreman, you can check him out. It's Black Conservative Perspective on YouTube. And I will put that link down below. You've got a lot of subscribers. You're doing a lot of great stuff. So I'm going to be watching your stuff from here on out, just to get that conservative perspective, that Black conservative perspective.
Yeah. Anytime you need one, you can hit me up.
All right. Thank you so much.
No problem.